Elias Vance leaned against the railing of the Alliance station, watching the stars outside the window. His mind kept going back to Vezana and the strange way she had reacted during the meeting. She was hiding something. He was sure of it. The Xelari were not weak. Their technology was advanced, their fleet one of the best in the galaxy. Yet they refused to fight. Not out of arrogance, not out of strategy, but out of fear. Elias had seen many kinds of fear in his time. The fear of soldiers before battle. The fear of leaders making hard choices. But this was something else. He needed to find out the truth. Vezana stood alone in her private chamber. The room was dim, lit only by the soft blue glow of the auxiliary symbols on the walls. Her hand shook slightly as she touched the edges of her mask. The humans were getting too close. Elias Vance was getting too close. For years, she had trained herself to remain calm, to follow tradition, to never question the mask that covered her face. It was her shield, her protection. Without it, she didn't know what she would become. But deep inside, a part of her wanted to know. A sudden chime echoed in the room. A message from the Xelari High Council. She activated the hologram, and the image of Elder Tyrol appeared. His own mask gleamed under the pale light. "You spoke with the humans today," Tyrol said. His voice was cold, sharp. "You did not convince them to leave us alone." Vezana lowered her head slightly. "They do not understand our reasons, Elder." "They must not understand," he warned. "We cannot fight. If we do, if we remove our masks in battle," his voice trailed off. But Vezana knew what he meant. She had heard the stories. The old legends of what happened when Xelari fought without their masks. But were they really legends, or was the truth something far worse? "I understand," she said quietly. "Then do not let the human push further," Tyrol commanded. "Keep the mask on. Always." The transmission ended. Vezana closed her eyes, but she could still see Elias' face in her mind. His piercing eyes, his careful words. He had seen her hesitate. He had noticed her fear. And deep inside, a part of her was terrified that he might be the first person to ever see past the mask. Meanwhile, Elias sat at his desk, tapping his fingers against the metal surface. He had just received new intelligence. Karthik assassins had been spotted near the station. Something told him this was not a coincidence. The Karthik wanted war. The Xelari wanted to hide. But Elias wanted the truth, and he would do whatever it took to uncover it. For over 10 years, Vezana had been the face of the Xelari Empire in interstellar politics. Yet, no one had ever truly seen her face. Like all Xelari, she wore a smooth, intricate biomask that covered her entirely from forehead to chin. The mask was more than just tradition. It was law. The Xelari believed that showing their true faces to outsiders was a disgrace. Their emotions were dangerous, they said. Uncontrolled. That was why the mask regulated everything, hiding any sign of fear, anger, or sorrow. But to Captain Elias Vance, the human diplomat, something felt off. He had spent years in the Galactic Alliance, negotiating with dozens of alien species. He had seen warlords, tyrants, and merchants, each with their own way of hiding the truth. But Vezana was different. Behind the glowing eyes of her mask, he sometimes caught glimpses of hesitation, small pauses before she spoke, a stiffness in her shoulders. She was hiding something, and it wasn't just her face. The grand hall of the Alliance Council was filled with delegates from every species. Holograms flickered above the long table, displaying maps of the Karthik swarm, a terrifying enemy that devoured entire planets. Elias leaned forward, speaking calmly. "The Karthik are spreading fast. We need the Xelari's help." Vezana, seated across from him, remained still. Her mask shimmered slightly as she processed his words. Then, in her usual calm, distant voice, she replied, "The Xelari do not engage in wars that do not concern us." Elias sighed. He had expected this answer. "It does concern you," he said. If the swarm reaches your borders, you won't be able to stay neutral. You'll be their next meal. Silence. Around them, other diplomats murmured. Everyone knew the Xelari were powerful, their technology advanced, but they had always avoided war. Elias studied Vezana carefully. He knew how to read people, even ones who wore masks. And right now, he didn't see arrogance in her posture. He saw fear. "Something's stopping you," he said quietly. "It's not just neutrality, is it?" Vezana's fingers twitched slightly on the table. It was a tiny movement, almost invisible. But Elias caught it. For the first time, she didn't have a perfect, rehearsed response. Instead, she simply said, "This meeting is over." She stood up, her long robes flowing behind her as she walked out of the chamber. Elias watched her leave, his mind racing. The Xelari could fight. They had ships, armies, and resources, but something deeper than politics, held them back. And for some reason, Elias had the strange feeling that the answer was hidden behind that mask. The alarms blared through the station, red lights flashing in warning. Elias Vance grabbed his sidearm, already moving toward the docking bay. The report had been clear. Karthik assassins were here. But why? His instincts told him they weren't after him. They were after Vezana. Vezana moved quickly through the empty corridors of the station, her long robe flowing behind her. Her mind was sharp, focused. She had sensed something was wrong the moment she stepped outside her chamber. Then the lights had flickered. The security systems had failed. And now she could hear footsteps in the distance. Not human, not Xelari. Karthik. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay calm. The mask would protect her. It always had. Then, from the shadows, a figure lunged. Vezana twisted just in time, dodging the sharp blade meant for her throat. The assassin hissed, a tall, insect-like creature with razor claws and black, armored skin. It moved fast, striking again. She barely avoided the attack, but the edge of the blade slashed through her robe, cutting deep into her shoulder. Pain flared, but she did not cry out. Xelari never showed weakness. She turned, ready to fight, just as a gunshot rang through the corridor. The assassin jerked backward, a hole in its chest. It collapsed, dead. Vezana looked up. Elias Vance stood at the end of the hallway, his pistol smoking. "Are you hurt?" Elias asked, moving toward her. "I am fine," she said quickly, pressing a hand to her wound. Elias didn't believe her. He could see the dark stains spreading across her robe. He could hear her unsteady breathing, even through the mask. "They were here for you," he said. "Why?" Vezana hesitated. She wanted to lie. She wanted to say it was nothing, that the Xelari had everything under control. But he had just saved her life. She owed him more than silence. Before she could speak, another explosion rocked the station. The walls trembled. The emergency lights flickered. Elias' communicator crackled. "Captain, the Karthik planted bombs in the docking bay. We have to evacuate now." Elias looked at Vezana. "We need to go." She nodded. Despite her injury, she followed him as they ran through the station. The hallways were chaos, smoke, fire, and shouting. As they reached the escape pods, Vezana stumbled. The wound was worse than she had admitted. Elias grabbed her arm, steadying her. "Hold on." Together, they jumped into a pod. The doors sealed shut. A second later, they were launched into space, just as the station behind them exploded into fire. Breathing heavily, Elias turned to her. "Now," he said, "you're going to tell me what the hell is really going on." Vezana, still gripping her bleeding shoulder, knew she could no longer hide the truth. The escape pod drifted through space, silent except for the hum of the engines. Inside, Elias Vance kept his eyes on Vezana. She sat across from him, pressing a hand against her wounded shoulder. The dark fabric of her robe was soaked with blood. "You need to let me look at that," Elias said. "I will heal," she replied, her voice steady. Elias sighed. I just saved your life. The least you can do is let me stop you from bleeding out. Vezana hesitated. The Xilari did not show weakness. To accept help was to admit vulnerability. But at this moment, she had little choice. She gave a small nod. Fine. Elias moved closer, pulling out a small medkit from his belt. As he reached for her shoulder, she flinched slightly. It wasn't the pain, it was the closeness. Gently, he pulled back the torn fabric of her robe, revealing smooth, dark blue skin beneath. The wound was deep, but not fatal. As he worked, he noticed something strange. The veins near the injury glowed faintly, pulsing like light trapped beneath her skin. What is this? Elias asked, fascinated. Vezana didn't answer at first. She was staring at him, watching his reaction carefully. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "It is why we wear the masks." Elias looked up, meeting her masked gaze. She continued, "The Xilari are not like humans. Our bodies react to emotion. The more we feel, the stronger it becomes." She gestured at her glowing veins. "Without the mask to regulate it, our emotions take control." Elias frowned. "Take control how?" Vezana's fingers curled into a fist. "Our ancestors called it the breaking. Without the mask, we feel too much. Rage, sorrow, fear, and when it happens," she hesitated, "we lose ourselves." Elias processed this. The Xilari had always been seen as calm, logical, reserved. But now he understood. It wasn't their nature. It was their prison. "Have you ever taken it off?" he asked. Vezana stiffened. "Never." Elias studied her. "But you wonder what would happen, don't you?" She didn't respond, but she didn't deny it either. Before they could continue, the escape pod's alarm blared. A planet was approaching fast. Elias rushed to the controls. "Looks like we're crashing." Vezana steadied herself. "Then we survive." The pod hit the atmosphere, shaking violently. Flames burned around them as they fell toward the unknown world below. As they braced for impact, Elias stole one last glance at Vezana's mask. For the first time, he felt certain. One day, he would see the face behind it. Vezana sat in the dim cavern, her breath slow but unsteady. The broken mask lay in her trembling hands, revealing part of her face to the human before her. Elias Vance did not look away. He should have. The Xilari never allowed outsiders to see them like this. But Elias wasn't like the others. And that terrified her. She turned her face slightly, trying to hide. "You must forget what you have seen." Elias shook his head. "That's not how this works, Vezana. You can't keep hiding forever." She clenched her jaw, the glow in her veins flickering. "You do not understand." "Then help me understand," Elias said. "You said the Xilari become something else if they break. What does that mean?" Vezana exhaled sharply. The words tasted like a confession she had buried for years. "We were not always a peaceful race," she admitted. "Long ago, the Xilari were conquerors. We ruled through power, not wisdom." Elias listened carefully. "Our emotions fuel our strength," she continued. "Fear makes us faster. Anger makes us stronger. Sorrow makes us unrelenting." She looked down at her hands. But there was a cost. Those who lost control never returned to themselves. They became something beyond Xilari. Elias frowned. "What happened to them?" Vezana's voice dropped to a whisper. "We had to destroy them." Silence filled the cavern. Elias finally understood. The masks weren't just for control. They were for survival. Vezana wasn't afraid of being seen. She was afraid of what she might become. A low growl echoed from deeper in the cavern. Elias tensed, gripping his pistol. "We're not alone." Vezana stood, her plasma blade igniting with a quiet hum. Her exposed skin still pulsed with faint energy, but she pushed her emotions down. She had to. From the shadows, two creatures emerged. larger than the beast they had fought before. Their eyes glowed white in the darkness, their claws dripping with something black and corrosive. Predators, hunting them. Elias aimed his gun. Got a plan. Vezana didn't answer. She was staring at the creatures, her pulse quickening. Fear. The glow in her veins flared, and for a second, Elias saw the air around her ripple. The creatures hesitated, sniffing the air. Their instincts screamed danger. Vezana gritted her teeth, pushing the emotions down. Not now. Not here. But Elias had seen it, a glimpse of what she could do. The creatures lunged. Vezana moved, faster than before. Her blade sliced through the first predator before it could react. Elias shot the second in the eye, but it still came at him. Vezana turned, and without thinking, she reached out. The air shook. A sudden, invisible force crushed the beast midair. It slammed into the cavern wall with enough force to break stone. Dead. Elias lowered his gun, staring at her. Vezana stood frozen, her veins glowing bright, her hands still raised. She had not touched the creature. She had willed it to die. And now, Elias wasn't sure if she was more afraid of herself, or if she liked what she had done. The escape pod roared through the atmosphere, shaking violently. Flames streaked past the window as it fell toward the surface. Elias gritted his teeth, gripping the controls. Hold on. Across from him, Vezana sat perfectly still. Her hands gripped the seat, but she didn't panic. Even as alarms blared, her mask remained as calm as ever. The ground rushed toward them, a thick jungle of dark blue trees stretching for miles. Then, impact. The pod crashed through the canopy, branches snapping like bones. It hit the ground hard, skidding through the dirt before finally slamming against a rocky hill. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, Elias groaned. His head ached, and everything spun. Smoke filled the cabin. He turned to Vezana. Are you? Before he could finish, she was already moving. With surprising speed, she unbuckled her harness and forced the hatch open. Fresh air rushed in. Elias stumbled out after her, coughing. They were surrounded by thick alien trees, their leaves glowing faintly in the dim light. The air was warm, humid. Strange sounds echoed in the distance, unfamiliar creatures moving through the jungle. We need to move, Vezana said. Her voice was steady, but Elias could see the way her injured shoulder trembled slightly. He exhaled. Yeah, agreed. They walked through the jungle, stepping over twisted roots and strange, glowing fungi. Elias checked his communicator. Dead signal. We're on our own. Vezana glanced at the darkening sky. This planet is uncharted. We do not know what dangers await. Elias smirked. We just survived a Karthik assassination and a crash. What's the worst that can happen? Vezana stopped walking. Elias frowned. What? She turned her head slightly. We are not alone. The jungle had gone silent. No more strange animal sounds. No more rustling leaves. Then, from the shadows, something moved. A low growl. Elias slowly reached for his gun. Friend or foe? A figure stepped into the dim light. Not Karthik. Not human. A tall, armored beast with 4 arms, razor-sharp claws, and piercing white eyes. It looked at them with hunger. Vezana whispered, Predator. The creature lunged. Elias fired his pistol. 1, 2, 3 shots. The energy bolts hit, but the beast barely flinched. Vezana spun aside, her movements graceful despite her injury. With a flick of her hand, a hidden plasma blade extended from her wrist. The creature swiped at her, but she ducked under its attack. Elias fired again, aiming for the legs. This time, the creature stumbled. Vezana took the opening. With one precise strike, she drove her glowing blade deep into the beast's chest. The creature let out a final snarl before collapsing. Elias exhaled. Remind me to never get on your bad side. Vezana didn't respond. She was staring at her own hand. Her veins were glowing again, brighter than before. And for the first time, Elias saw it. A crack in her mask. Vezana sat frozen, her breath uneven. The cracked mask, the glowing veins, the tear rolling down her exposed cheek. This was everything the Xilari feared. She was exposed, weak, vulnerable. Elias did not look away. He saw her, not as a Xilari warrior, not as a leader of a powerful race, but as a person who had been hiding for far too long. She turned away quickly, her hands shaking as she reached for the broken piece of her mask. "I must fix it," she whispered. "I cannot let them see." Elias placed a hand over hers, stopping her. "Who is them?" She didn't answer. Instead, she clenched her fists. The veins beneath her skin glowed even brighter, pulsing with energy. The air around her felt charged, like a storm building in the distance. Elias narrowed his eyes. "Your people don't just wear masks to hide, do they?" Vezana's hands trembled. She didn't want to answer. But Elias had already figured it out. "Your emotions don't just change you," he said slowly. "They give you power." She inhaled sharply. Elias nodded, realization hitting him like a thunderstrike. That's why the Xilari are so calm. Why they refuse to fight. It's not because they're weak. He looked into her glowing violet eyes. It's because they're too strong. Vezana squeezed her eyes shut, her body tense. "The breaking," she murmured. Elias frowned. "What happens if you break?" She exhaled. "We become something else, something unstoppable." Elias processed this. If the Xilari ever removed their masks and let go of their control, they wouldn't just lose themselves. They could destroy everything. And Vezana, she was on the edge. Another piece of her mask crumbled away, revealing more of her face. Elias saw beauty, pain, and power, all mixed together. Vezana's breathing quickened. The cavern walls trembled slightly, tiny rocks falling from above. The storm inside her was growing. Elias reached out, his voice gentle. "Vezana, you're not alone in this." She looked at him, eyes searching his face for something. For the first time, she saw a human who wasn't afraid, a human who wanted to understand. The storm inside her calmed. The glow in her veins softened. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. Elias Vance might be the first person in the galaxy who truly saw her, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for that. Vezana stared at her hand. The glow beneath her skin pulsed wildly, brighter than ever before. She clenched her fingers, trying to calm herself, but it wasn't working. The fight, the pain, the emotions, they were building up inside her. Then she noticed it. A crack in her mask. Small, almost invisible, running along the lower edge near her jaw. But it was there. And it meant one thing. Her control was slipping. Elias saw it too. He stepped closer, watching her carefully. "Hey, you okay?" Vezana turned away sharply. "We need to keep moving." Elias hesitated. He could hear something in her voice, a crack, just like in the mask. But he let it go. For now. They moved deeper into the jungle. The air was thick, humid, and filled with the scent of damp earth. Every step felt heavy, like the planet itself was trying to pull them down. Vezana walked ahead, her movements stiff. She kept one hand near her mask, as if afraid it might break further. Elias watched her, trying to put the pieces together. The Xilari feared their emotions. They feared what would happen if they lost control. But why? He remembered the way her veins glowed, the way her blade had burned brighter when she struck the beast. Maybe their emotions weren't just dangerous. Maybe they were powerful. But before he could ask, the jungle shifted around them. A deep, rumbling sound. Vezana stopped. Something is coming. Elias raised his pistol. "I hate this planet." Then the ground beneath them collapsed. They tumbled down a steep incline, rolling through vines and dirt, until they crashed into an underground cavern. Elias groaned. That was unpleasant. Vazana sat up, her breathing heavy. The crack in her mask had grown. A large chunk had broken off near her cheek, revealing a glimpse of her smooth, dark blue skin beneath. Elias froze. For years, no one had ever seen the face of a Xelari outside their own kind. It was forbidden. And yet here she was. Vazana touched the broken edge, her fingers trembling. Her breathing became unsteady. Too much, too fast. Elias knelt beside her. Vazana. She didn't look at him. I cannot. Elias reached out, carefully touching her shoulder. It's okay. Her glowing veins pulsed brighter. The mask was failing. And for the first time, Elias saw something he had never expected. A single tear slipped down her exposed cheek. The Xelari did not show emotion. They did not cry. But Vazana wasn't just a Xelari. She was something more, and Elias was the first person in the galaxy to ever see her for who she really was.